Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
This is the most important step anybody will ever do. It is in two parts. And we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Now, I took the second part of the first step. It took me 6 months to come to terms with admitting I was an alcoholic. But I kept coming, and that is the key to becoming sober, is to keep coming through the doors. Doesn't matter how much you dislike it. You still have to put the footwork in. Nobody hated that word alcoholic more than I did. I could have come in 3 years prior to coming in. I tried everything to stop drinking. I took the pledge 9 times, twice on Good Friday in 1959, and that didn't work, but it was beneficial because I knew I had to look elsewhere. I had tried doctors, but I tried doctors again once after taking the pledge then, and he said to me, "You're an alcoholic, would you go to AA?" And nobody had ever called me an alcoholic. I knew I drank, and I knew all my faults. And I said, no, I wouldn't. And he said, "I've got a friend in AA, would you talk to him?" And I said, no. He said, "It's not as hard as you think it is." And I said, "But I'm not interested." And as I got to the door, he said to me, "You will one day." And I turned around and I said, "What did you say?" He said, "I just said you will one day." And I did one day, 6 months after that. And the first meeting, everybody was a daily drinker, so I thought I wasn't an alcoholic. I thought you had to drink every day, and I was a bender drinker. So I kept looking at that step, though, the next day, and then the gentleman that took me to my first meeting rang me and asked me to come to a meeting that night. So I went along, and I thought he was a bender drinker. And I had never heard the word bender drinker before, but I fitted into his category. So I thought, well, I do want to stop drinking, but I won't ever say I'm an alcoholic. So I went along for 6 months. And in Brisbane, when I joined AA, we had closed meetings. And the wiser, older members thought if she doesn't speak and get that word out, she will drink. So they asked me if I would speak at this this open meeting that they had once a month. And I always said, after that second meeting I was at, I'd do anything I was asked to do except speak. But they pointed out to me that if I didn't speak, I may not stay sober. So I thought, how can I get that word out? I'm an alcoholic. So I went along to this meeting. I took my husband to the meeting. And that was the first time he'd come to a meeting. And they duly called me. And I said, "My name's Doreen. I'm an alcoholic. I don't really mean that. I'm a compulsive social drinker." And I meant that with all my heart. But it didn't help the word alcoholic. Not to this day. I still dislike the word. So after that I tried, I thought, I've just got to accept it. And I thought perhaps there are other words that you can use. So I tried dipsomaniac for a while. And I thought, that sounded rather horrible. So eventually I came to believe that I had to say that I was an alcoholic. Now, it is the most important step you'll ever take. If you can take step 1, you continue on with the rest of the steps. But it's no use trying to do step 2 until you are sure in your own mind that you know what you're talking about and you want what AA has to offer. And it's quite simple, actually. This program is as simple as you want it, or as hard as you want it. And some people just miss the simplicity of this program. I've never regretted going through that 6 months, actually, because it gave me time to think about the whole of AA generally and the happiness that I saw in people's faces, even when they shared. The people that would get up and say, I'm an alcoholic. And I'd think, well, you know, they're getting more out of this program than I am. And I used to think, well, all I want to do is stop drinking. And if that's what AA affords me to do, well, I'm quite happy. But I didn't do the steps, and I don't want anybody to take after me, for 7 years. Because people power kept me sober, and the first step. But I reached a stage where after 7 years, one night at 11:45, I said to my husband, I'm going to drink. And he got a terrible shock. I was living in Melbourne at the time, and he said to me, ring Father Michael in Sydney. And I did. I was quite obedient then, which I never was. And Michael said to me, get on the first plane tomorrow morning and come to Sydney. And my husband came with me. And I rang Michael when he said, ring me as soon as you get there. And I did, and I was a dry drunk. The housekeeper answered the phone, and she said he was out seeing a sick lady. And I thought, how dare he? And I said, he told me to ring him as soon as I got off the plane. And she said, well, he's now said for you to ring back at 12:30. And I thought, I'm not waiting till 12:30 to ring him. And had the most dreadful morning, drove my husband mad. But I was still sober at 12:30, so I rang him. And he said, if you're still sober at 5 o'clock, I'm saying Mass, if you're in the church, I'll take you to dinner. Well, I was in the church, and I was the only one in the church. It was a Wednesday afternoon, so he couldn't miss me. And he said to my husband, come back at 10:30 and pick Doreen up. And when we were walking into the meeting, I said to him, tell them I'm an observer. He was the first person called to speak, and he said, I've got a very dear friend here tonight who'd love to share. And I thought, you can't trust anybody in this fellowship. But I got up, and I knew, as soon as I started speaking, I knew there had to be more than people power to keep me sober. So we came back to Melbourne, and I went through the steps. There weren't any steps meetings in those days. And I went through them individually, very slowly, but I eventually got to the 12th step. And even to this day, people say to me, why do you still go to meetings? And I just say to them, when you get to the 12th step, you'll know why. Because if everybody got to the 12th step and stopped going to meetings, there would be nobody around to continue this wonderful fellowship. And to me, it is the only miracle of the 20th century, Alcoholics Anonymous. I can't think of anything else that has occurred. But you've got to really be sincere and understand we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. That is the key. And most of us know that our lives are unmanageable when we're drinking. But it is a bitter pill, and I do feel for people who felt like I did. And I'm not alone. People still to this day tell me how they hate the word. And, I mean, I'm 49 years sober and I still hate it. So what hope have you got? But it does lessen, I must say that. I mean, it rolls off my tongue now as though I'm saying have a cup of coffee. But it took a long time for me to get to that stage. And I think once you get over the admitting you're an alcoholic and get the word out, you can have a certain peace in your mind that you've never had in your life before. I think it is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, I had 4 children under the age of 7 when I came in, and that was pretty terrific while I was drinking too. But I had a very good husband. and he stuck by me. And I had the privilege of looking after him when he died too. I nursed him at home for the last 3 months of his life, and I always felt good about that. And so much so, I'm a Catholic, he wasn't. But he turned a Catholic on his deathbed to please me, and I thought, isn't that remarkable, the life that I gave him for those years when I was drinking. I mean, I didn't have a long drinking time. I didn't have a drink until I was 23. But I believe I was an alcoholic from my first drink. I didn't want to go home from that first party. And I looked around at people and I thought, they're not getting out of this alcohol that I am. And, they were all ready to go home. And they would have been what was classed as social drinkers. And I don't think I was a social drinker at any stage. But what saved me was being the bender drinker. And I suppose that was the hard part of accepting that I was an alcoholic, that I didn't drink every day. I expected people to fall flat on their face every day, and I didn't do that. But I'm not going to go on any longer because short and sweet is the best as far as I'm concerned. Oh, not 10 minutes. You're joking. I've never been a long speaker, so you get me on the cheap. That's much better. 2 minutes now I'm down to. That's more in my line. I don't know what it is about me. I just hate speaking. It's not because I can't get the word out anymore. I suppose when you've spoken for 49 years, it becomes a bit of a bore, doesn't it? But I have to keep going because I'm still an alcoholic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, friends. My name is Frank. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm sober. I'm sober this morning, and my home group is the Steps and Setting group, and my sobriety date is the 17th of August, 2004. I guess I'll start by telling you a little bit about my story. I was born and I grew up in Germany, and I started drinking there when I was about 15, 16, and I drank like my mates, or it looked at least as if I was drinking like most of my mates in the beginning, and but 10 years down the track, I found myself at the first AA meeting, and I definitely was at the right place then. I'm not sober since then. That was, I was 26, 16 years ago. And what had happened, by the time I was 26, I was daily drinking for pretty much most of those 10 years, and I found I couldn't stop, I had to drink, and I had to drink daily, and by the end I had to drink to stop the shakes and to be doing what I had to do, and I had jobs like driving a taxi, weekend night shifts, and that were 12-hour shifts, and believe me, when you're thirsty, 12 hours are very, very long, yeah, it got really, really hard, and my solution then, or my idea of dealing with it was, and I did that. I went to a doctor and I wanted medication, I thought that could work, I take medication whenever I didn't want to drink, or I would be better off not drinking. And luckily the doctor I spoke to was knew a bit about this, I suppose, and she didn't want to give me those medications, and she said, no, you would just use and abuse those as well. And I'm very happy, I'm very grateful today that I never was introduced to medication, because that could or would have possibly added a whole other chapter to my drinking, to my life, to my story, and I might be dead today. And anyway, and another thing I probably was, and I say probably because it's not as if I remember it all clear. You know, it's long time ago. It's a big haze. You know, I remember bits, and some bits I just imagine that's how they were. You know, and but I must have been honest to quite a degree and desperate to quite a degree with that female doctor, and so that she was able to sort of help me. You know, and she suggested to do a detox, and I agreed, you know, and that was a very big step, because that meant, without knowing about that first step, but it was out there then, you know, I admitted that booze and I wasn't such a good combination, you know, and family would know, and because I didn't make up a story, I told family and friends that I was about to go into a hospital for a detox, and a lot of them were surprised, or at least acted surprised. There were mates who said, "What do you mean, alcoholic? You know, you're not drinking more than we do. You know, if you're one, we are one," and all that sort of stuff. You know, and but see, they didn't know that when we left the pub, I went home to a fridge that only had beer in it. You know, no food, and that I would finish myself off then. You know, and all that business. And anyway, so there I was. I agreed to go into the detox, and it was only like, and that female doctor, she said to me, "Look, getting off the alcohol under supervision is easy. You'll be in there for 5 nights, and but staying off it will be the harder bit, you know." And so it was. I was in the hospital. And towards the end, there was an AA meeting, and I attended that, and I guess it was good. It was interesting. I got a bit of hope, I believe. And again, I say that because I don't really remember much. I don't remember banners. I don't remember people talking about steps. But I do remember people getting their lives better again, you know. And I could sense the honesty in the room, and yeah, I probably did get a bit of hope, and but yeah, I wasn't to stay. See, I got out of the hospital. I went to one meeting a week. Everybody was older. Everybody was male, and I guess I didn't want to be there. You know, it was just bad news. You know, although you said it's only a day at a time, you know, I was smart enough, or I had worked it out, you know, a day after a day after a day is a bloody long lifetime, you know, and I was only 26, and I didn't get, what you mean not go to they're my friends, you know, they're all I have. They're the ones who stood by me the last 10 years, or the last 20 years, or 26 years, or whatever, you know. The soccer I loved, I wasn't that good anymore. I was happily going from first to second to third team, because it meant less training and more booze, you know, but I still loved all the, you know, like you guys love your footy, that's what the soccer was for me. And so bottom line is, I sat in those meetings and I wasn't happy with the diagnosis, I guess, you know, and I wanted out of these doors. And so I guess I found myself listening to the differences, and there were a few, you know, the people talk about divorces and jail sentences and losing custody of kids, and none of that had happened to me, you know, and of course, you know, I think Lillian said last night, one meeting a week makes you weak. You know, I never heard that before. So, yeah, I left, you know, I didn't stay. I thought, of course, on a meeting a week, the disease got the better of me and told me, you know, maybe I had exaggerated a bit, and so I went out again, you know, and but one thing happened, one thing changed for me. I never really went back to daily drinking. I mean, I would binge drink over 4 or 5 days, but I always sort of managed to get a few days without the drink in, and I guess that's how I conned myself into believing that I had some sort of grip on my drinking, or that my drinking now resembled something like social or controlled drinking or whatever, you know. But needless to say that alcohol occupied me still 24/7, whether I drank it or not. You know, I was when I wasn't drinking, I was planning the next drink and looking forward to it and fantasizing about it. And not only when would I drink next, I would have also go and plan when would I slow down again to be off it by that and that day, to be able to do such and such task. You know, it was just such a nightmare. And thinking back of it, you know, it wasn't living, it was surviving. It was so hard work, you know. And but I did that for 11 long years, you know. For 11 long years, I tried to do it my way. I tried to do everything but AA, and not even really knowing it or being aware of it. Because when I come to that part of my story, or think about that part of my story, I would think one should think that every so often I would remember AA or contemplate maybe going back, you know. But no, I had wiped that part of my brain off, I think, you know. Such is the denial, or I guess that's what it is, or the delusion, or whatever, you know. I'm not too sure on the definitions, but 11 long years I tried it my way, you know, until coming up in August, it will be 5 years ago. I've come to that crossroads, or whatever you want to call it. Again, that point I had been at 26, you know, and at 26 my idea was to go to the doctor. Well, now I was 37 5 years ago, and I knew that wasn't an option, and it's progressed, you know. I was 11 years worth, you know, because and now it was, now my solution was killing myself, you know, because there was no hope left. There was no, I couldn't see why to go on, you know, and so now it was, that was my idea now, and obviously I had second thoughts, and I want to fast forward now, because I want to speak a bit about recovery as well. So, yeah, then in August 2004, I reached out again, and I remembered there was AA, and I thought there's a good chance there might be AA in Melbourne, you know, and I called the operator, and they put me on to the central office, and it was a Tuesday, and they said there's a meeting, and the guy on the phone said there's a meeting in Footscray, but it's a discussion group, and it's a closed meeting, and I don't think it's good if you're a newcomer, you know, if you've never been to AA. And I wanted so bad, because I sort of knew, I didn't think those words, but I think in my gut I knew it was AA or Amen, you know, and I wanted to go to this meeting. So I said, I've been 11 years ago. And he says, okay, go on then, you know. And I was very welcomed at that meeting, you know, and then the next day I went to another meeting, and people who were at that Tuesday meeting were there, and they remembered my name, and you all experienced that, I guess, a bit, you know, and yeah, and this time things were different for me. This time I really got the hope. I immediately, pretty much immediately saw people. Well, actually, immediately I fell in love with one of the girls at that meeting, you know. So that made me come back. But you know, good I came back. Doesn't matter why, you know. But really immediately, because my coming in here was a relationship breakup, see. The girl I was together with for 7 years finally had enough, and that wasn't good news, you know. And funny enough, I told the boys I had coffee with her yesterday, because I'm going overseas and we're friends today, you know. And I wasn't happy 5 years ago, but today I know it's the best that's ever happened to me, you know. But 5 years ago, I thought I wasn't so interested in sobriety program and AA. I think what I wanted was just another girlfriend, you know, and could she please be better looking, smarter than the one, more money maybe, you know, than the one that kicked me out, and you know, lucky that wasn't to happen, and I was that one suggested year by myself, and it's all happened. It had to happen for me, But what I wanted to say, so very soon after coming, pretty much immediately, I came across actually a lot of people, who I could see were happy, who had what I wanted, who could bring across that they were happy about not drinking, that they were not just white knuckling, and that's what I wanted, And for me, I know that a friend of mine in the program, he says that he was cooked when he came into AA, and 5 years ago I was cooked. I was ready. I think I had arrived at that first step. I had thrown the towel in, and I was finally teachable, and I wasn't here for an argument anymore. And today I know that is essential, that I have to be, in order to be successful with this program, I have to be willing, I have to have an open mind, and I have to be honest, foremost to myself, cut out the bullshit, I was ready for this, I was teachable, and I know that's not the case for everybody, I just heard, it was just pointed out to me recently by somebody that, the first half of the book, there's 160 pages 160 odd pages describing the program, and then about 100 pages are devoted to the recovery bit. And about half of it talks about the first, or maybe the first and the second step. So it's not quite as simple, apparently, as just walking into an AA meeting and thinking one has taken the first step, and it says in that book, we have to learn to conceive to our innermost self that we can't drink, that are not the exact words, but that's, I think, what it means to say. And it says to learn, so it can be quite a learning process, apparently, luckily for me, this book makes sense. I don't need to argue it, and I treat it for what it is, a textbook, and that explains me how to live, because I've just been to a meeting 2 days ago where a speaker said, me as an alkie, my problem is not the alcohol, my problem is me and living, and my natural state is being irritable, discontent, what's the other one? Restless, irritable, restless, and discontent, and I used alcohol to combat that as the medication, and it worked a while and then it stopped, we all know that, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And so now the remedy is a spiritual way of living, and that gives me peace of mind, the peace of mind I have today is the opposite to that restlessness and that discontentment and that, and that's what I get out of this program, and I will close on saying, and that also makes sense to me because I've experienced that this is the step I really have to swallow, 100%, no arguing, no little bit of maybe or 99.99, because if I do that, I drink again, if I have the slightest doubt, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm different, I'll drink, and so this is the step I have to do 100%, and then I came, and after about I was going really well in my first weeks and months, maybe up to 6 months, and then I came to a bit of a standstill. But by those 6 months, I had met a lot of people, talked to a lot of you, learned to talk, and then somebody said, well, maybe it's time for you to look at those steps. Just going to the very good ID meetings I attended, beautiful, but it wasn't enough anymore, and then I knew I needed help with those steps, because that the other stuff after step 2 was was Chinese, and all the stuff we will be hearing over the weekend, what I called God steps, and I wasn't interested in religion, and I since learned that this is not a religious show, and I heard another lovely thing. Somebody said, if you look at the 9-step promises, that they're in this book. After working this program, after the 9th step, there's some promises in there, and that person said to me, they don't talk about the afterlife, they talk about this life. So this is not a religious show. This is a spiritual program, and so I needed help with all these other steps, and that's when I started attending the different steps meetings, and they've done me a lot of good, and I still go, and there's a lot of different ones in Melbourne, and that's, I guess, what the workshops are for. You get an idea how, some have the big book out and do a bit of reading and studying. Very good, it's so beneficial to know this book, and every time I read it, I find something new in it, and I've read it a couple of times first, and then I've read it with the help of this Joe and Charlie tapes. It's a workshop, and if you don't know what that is, ask pretty much any of us, or a lot of us know it, and you find, I don't know how to do it, but they're on the internet. That's when I read the book with those tapes, the pennies just dropped, and in an entertaining way, and in a real good way. So I feel blessed that basically it's a big one to be able to say, I'm comfortable with this book. It makes sense to me, and I'm happy to follow its suggestions. And I leave it at that. And we need the fellowship. I also learned, I know and understand that I can't do it by myself. It wouldn't work taking that book home with me and just reading it by myself. So thanks for being here for me. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.